My name is Kathy Grossman, and I'm a general education teacher.
How do you incorporate special needs kids into your general education classroom?
Well, first of all, I consider all my kids special needs because everyone comes to me with their own needs, and I think that helps reassure special needs parents too, that their children aren't the only ones. And one of the first things I want is to make the classroom environment feel welcoming and safe so that they're comfortable being here and they want to come to class and join us.
Kids with ADHD or autism want to be independent. Try Goalie, the visual scheduler that guides them through routines so you don't have to. Goalie, reinventing routines.
As a teacher, I have standards and curriculum, but how I use those and how I meet the standards is very fluid. So when I know that I have a special needs child coming into my class, I look at their needs and I can work with changing the environment. I can work with, how we're going to approach the curriculum, and I go from there. And usually I find that the approach works for all the children, not just the special needs children. It takes me a little while in the beginning of the year to get to know a student, but I definitely bond with my students, and then I can use that to help me, plan my curriculum, plan our day. I'm very, very organized as a teacher, and I think that helps with special needs because I have good classroom management, and so I make the environment comfortable and safe for them. I have a minimum amount of behavior issues because of being organized. With a special needs child, I feel it's my professional duty to model the behavior for everyone in the classroom, students, parents who are in the classroom. I never act like I am frustrated with that child, even when they're having a bad day.
For families living with ADHD or autism, preventing meltdowns is everything. Goalie reduces stress by enabling kids to complete routines independently. Goalie, reinventing routines.
And it just makes me so emotional because I feel like as soon as you do that, you've set the tone for the other students, for the parents to feel like, she has this burden or this person's a burden. And I never feel like it's a burden, and I never want them to think that, and I want my behavior to be modeled back by the other students. So that's a big one for me.
How do you learn about your students' sensory needs, and how do you incorporate those into the classroom?
Sometimes they're identified in an IEP, and I get those prior to the start of the year. So I can look at those and then look at my classroom environment and see what I can have already in place for them. I often find that they change as the year goes on and as I get to know the child. So then I can bring in other types of things to address their sensory needs. I have the little bumpy cushion. I use a lot of the squishy toys. I have beanbag chairs. I also do things for sensory breaks. I use lighting, music. If I have help in the class, I can give a child a break by going outside, doing the swings, doing stairs. I've used food as a sensory break. I had a student a few years ago who, by the end of the day, he was just at his wit's end. So I found if his mom packed him a separate little snack, we taught him to go kind of to a back table, and while the rest of the kids were on the rug, he would have his crunchy snack of some chips or carrots, and it kind of provided him with his Calgon break. And then he would rejoin us on the rug, and it was the perfect thing. He just took that break, and then he was ready to finish out the day. And the other students, in the beginning, a few of them asked me or would say, "I'm hungry too." And I said, well, you need a note from your mom saying you can have an extra snack, and then you can do the same thing. And, of course, I'm sure they went home and asked their moms, and they're like, what? No, you don't need another snack. So it just kind of, that answered the question, and nobody asked me. And then once that was part of our routine, that's what we did, and it worked out really well for him.
How have you found OT to be helpful in the classroom?
I think, I've learned about it from the kids that I've had in my class, but I find it benefits all my students. I use so many different types of, things I've learned through our occupational therapist, and it just applies to everyone. For instance, we started last year when they would come in from recess and lunch, they're all wound up. So we started with sitting down on the rug and using some pressure point exercises, and just immediately everyone calms down. And it just made such a difference. And when I would forget to do it or forget to write it on the board as part of our schedule, they picked up on it immediately. They were asking for it because they knew that it made them feel better. The bumpy cushion, I often have that in place for a particular student, but I make it available to other students. Sometimes, just if they're having a bad day, there's something soothing about using that. I use lighting too. If we're all having a day where everybody's kind of wound up, maybe we do a time with the lights down low and just a quiet story. So there's so many things, and it just applies to everyone. And a lot of them, I've made them just part of my basic routine. I don't, wait for that one child who needs it to implement it for everyone. Sometimes with parents that are, it can be a special needs child or just, a general education student.
Kids with ADHD or autism want to be independent. Try Goalie, the visual scheduler that guides them through routines so you don't have to. Goalie, reinventing routines.
But it's such a sensitive thing. If their child is having a problem, maybe they're having a problem with a child on the playground, or they're struggling with reading or writing, and parents want to rescue them, and they come to me, can't you keep them away from so-and-so, or help, they need, less to do on their writing or reading assignment. And I feel like this sends a message to the child of, you need to bail me out. And I really want to make it between me and the student. And I'm behind the scenes, I'm very willing to negotiate, but I never want the child to know that this is coming as mom and dad are rescuing me, because then they go home and this starts just this awful pattern of, I can't, instead of letting me kind of work it out with the child. And I can very easily do modifications, and they don't even know that it's going on. And to me, that's the better way, because then they feel successful. They're doing it. They've worked it out themselves, rather than having their parents, come in and save them. Or with special needs, it can also be with an aid. And that's another big one with an aid. It's if a child has an aid, I really stress that the aid is there to kind of move in, help them out, and then kind of move away, because students very quickly learn that aid is there and will rely on them. And that just starts such a bad domino effect of them, working in the class, working with other students. They begin to socialize with their aid and not their students. And so I really stress that the aid is kind of to be on the periphery, kind of, on the shadow, and they really have to wait before they step in, look to see, can that child get help from me? Can they get help from another peer? Rather than going in there and doing it for them.
Do you work with the IEP team to identify the child's needs?
Well, we always meet at the beginning of the year when I have a student identified. And so we sit down, and that's probably the most thorough discussion we have until maybe we meet again when it's a formal IEP. Unfortunately, we're not given as much time as I think we all would like to meet, with our team. I'm lucky in this district. We have an amazing group of people. They're very creative. They're very willing to give of their time. So we'll meet after school sometimes, if I really need some help from them. And then, sometimes some of them are on a consult basis to me, so they'll come and visit me in the classroom, and we can talk then. And of course, they come and observe the student, and then they can give me their feedback.
What are your thoughts on parent involvement?
I love having parents volunteer in the classroom. I love having them work with my kids in the classroom. I think it sends a message to all the students that education's important, that they value it, that they take their time to come in. With special education students, sometimes it's a good thing to have them in the room, and sometimes it's kind of overwhelming for those students. So I'll find other ways for the parents to help, or maybe they come on a as needed basis, maybe for a special event or a field trip. I always love to get feedback from parents. I like information about what's going on at home, because sometimes that's carrying over into the classroom. So maybe if there's, been a big event in the family, it helps for them to kind of keep me informed on what's going on. But I also like my space. Sometimes parents feel like they need to just tell me everything, and I have to kind of discover the child on my own and make a bond with them.
For families living with ADHD or autism, preventing meltdowns is everything. Goalie reduces stress by enabling kids to complete routines independently. Goalie, reinventing routines.
Are there things parents can do to prepare their child to be more successful in the classroom?
I think the biggest thing is to work with your child to be independent, to teach them the basics coming in as far as care. Even children with special needs that maybe have some physical limitations, they need to know ways that they can adapt. If they are in a wheelchair and they can't get their coat on by themselves, how do they ask for help without demanding it of me, or, if there's an aide in the room. So the independence is a big one, and I find a lot of times parents do so much for their kids. They feel that they're doing that to help them, but instead they're kind of keeping their kids from learning to do it on their own. And as a parent of adult children, your kids need you for a long, long time. So even working on them on taking care of things on their own, they're not going to give you up and be done with you when they're still in elementary school. The other thing is respect. A lot of kids come into the class, and I can tell very quickly if they come from a home where they, interrupt, don't know how to sit still. So respect is a big one, and that translates into the classroom as respect for other adults, for me, for other adults that come in the room, for their peers. So that's key.